the Big Finish main range. And we're talking about the Spectre of Lanyon Moor, which is a 6th Doctor story, starring Colin Baker, obviously. It's written by Nicholas Pegg, and it's the second story with Evelyn. So, of course, you've got Maggie Stables returning, and you get Nicholas Courtney appearing in Big Finish for the first time as the Brigadier. The basic plot of this story is that the Doctor and Evelyn arrive in Cornwall, and there's like these relics, not relics, like ancient ghoulie, do they call it? No, fugu. There's this fugu thing, which is like an ancient tunnel, tomb kind of thing, and there's like a survey or whatever going on around it. And of course the Brigadier's there, investigating undercover. And there's this story about a spectre, of course, given the name of the story. But this was good fun. I enjoyed this. One thing that people have said a lot about Big Finish, certainly early Big Finish, is that it mellowed out the 6th Doctor, softened out the 6th Doctor. And yeah, I'm definitely starting to, I was going to say see that, I'm starting to hear that now. We've had 3 stories with him, and of course he was in the Sirens of Time, but we've had 3 stories where it's just been the 6th Doctor, and a companion, of course. Of course, the first one with Perry. Whispers of Terror, which was decent, but nothing special. And then we had the introduction of Evelyn in the Marrying Conspiracy, which I really, really enjoyed. I loved that story. A great little pure historical. And yeah, I enjoyed this one as well, a fair deal. I do really like Evelyn as a character. There's a different pace to her as a companion, and she bounces off the 6th Doctor really well. There's a great moment in this where there's a character who isn't believing what the Doctor and the Brigadier are saying is happening, because they're talking about stuff that's obviously quite fantastical, and this other character doesn't believe it, so the Doctor sort of has a go at him a little bit, and Evelyn kind of talks him down a little bit, and is like, well, don't be so harsh, go and apologise, and then he does. So they work really well together as a dynamic. I also felt that the Brigadier worked really well with the 6th Doctor in this story. They just got on instantly. And it was an interesting story. It did lose me a little bit in the final part. It kind of devolved a little bit into the monster kind of is revealed in the final part, and it becomes a bit less interesting of a story. But it was still good. It was still a decent story. Overall, it's still enjoyable, certainly, yeah. And I really enjoyed the dynamic between the Doctor and Evelyn, and you throw the Brigadier into that and he just works perfectly as well, so that all, I had a good time with this story. I had a really fun time. One thing that did strike me as odd was how similar in a way this story was to a Doctor Who story I have in my head. You know how every Doctor Who fan has an idea of the way they would write Doctor Who and the kind of Doctor Who stories they would tell. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but I have a story in my head based on a place in Scotland I've been to a couple of times, which I used to love as a kid, and it's one of those places where you go and you think there's a Doctor Who story in this place called Buck's Glen, and there's like a little rhyme about that place on the sort of notice, in National Trust area, I think, and on the sort of notice board or information board, there's this little rhyme about it, which the Doctor recites in this story. It's slightly different to the version I'm familiar with, but what he says, up the misty mountain and down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. That little rhyme has stuck with me. I'm fairly sure, at least in my head, is daren't we go a-hunting, but it's the same thing, innit? But that little rhyme has been in my head for many years, and I've always felt there was a Doctor Who story in there, and so it was interesting. It was quite interesting to hear that in an actual Doctor Who story. It was a very odd moment for me, especially as well with this TARDIS dynamic, because that's a dynamic I'd love to see on TV, with a younger, youthful Doctor with an older female companion, an older woman who is sort of a bit like his mum, or her mum. So it was interesting. It's not really that much like the story I have in my head, which I'm not going to massively reveal, because, hey, you never know, one day I might get to write it. But it was interesting to hear that in a story and think, that's my idea. But yeah, I had a good time with this. I thought the characters were fun. And I'm really enjoying the Sick Doctor stuff, especially with Evelyn. There was a comment left, I forget what the person's name was, who left it on the first video of these I did on the Sirens of Time review. You know, talking about someone who had listened to a lot of Big Finish and said, you know, enjoy the ride and you're in for a treat, especially with the audio original companions for the different Doctors. And, you know, so far Evelyn is the only one I've encountered, but I'm finding that to be absolutely true. I think she works brilliantly with the Doctor. Colin Baker and Maggie Stables have a lovely rapport, but they've not neutered to his character. He's not entirely unlike his TV counterpart. He's just a little less brash and a little less harsh, which makes sense when you consider that this is intended to be like post-Trial of a Time Lord. I assume she's got to be, Evelyn is in between Perry and Mel. Although how does Mel even meet the Doctor? Who knows? So the Doctor was already becoming a bit softer at that point on television. But they really work with that in audio. And I think Colin Baker's got such a fantastic voice for audio. And yeah, I really enjoyed this story. Probably not my favourite. I think I preferred stories like The Fearmonger and The Marion Conspiracy a little bit more, but this was up there. This was decent. I think if it hadn't in the last part you get the monster, and they just sound a bit like a generic Doctor Who monster, and it was a bit of the sixth Doctor and Evelyn. I can't wait to listen to more stuff with them because they're great. So yeah, have you listened to this story? If you have, let me know what you thought. Of course, like and comment and subscribe and do all those YouTube things that help the algorithm and help to grow the channel. And yes, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for listening, and I will see you all next time.